All right, the battle is on. The question is, no matter what happens tonight, and 1% of the precincts are in, so we got a long ways to go here with Doug Jones, the Democrat, leading. Mitch McConnell is all set to hold a meeting with all Republican senators if Roy Moore were to win. It would be a moot point, of course, if Democrat Doug Jones wins. But the concern among the establishment, or whatever you want to call him, is that they didn't want him anyway. And then the president kind of forced their hand by saying, well, he beats the Democrat. Presidential historian Doug Wead on what options the GOP might have in that event. Still with Lee Carter, still with Kennedy as well. They'll be all part of this mix here. Doug, Republicans are betwixt and between here. I often get the feeling that if they had their druthers, it'd be a relief if Moore lost. Losing a Republican seat when the margins are so narrow to begin with would seem an oxymoron, but we know the environment in which this is happening, right?
Yes, we do. And we know that anything can happen. And the Republicans can do whatever they want. Their hand is not forced here. I mean, Ted Kennedy had a young lady die in his car when he abandoned her when he was drunk, and he got reelected. And the mayor of Washington, D.C. smoked crack cocaine with a prostitute. He got reelected. Barney Franks had his live-in lover running a house of prostitution.
I get it. I know where we're going here, Doug.
He got reelected. So Roy Moore could leave him alone.
But if that does not happen, and all of a sudden Moore were to lose tonight, I almost get the feeling that there would be relief among a lot of these Republicans. You?
Yes and no. It's interesting to see the Democrats pivoting, the National Democrats, this group of women, pivoting as if they're going to move away from Russia to become the party of moral values. Now, if the Democrat Party and their allies in Hollywood and the mainstream media become the party of moral values, that's the equivalent of a triple axel, triple toe. It would be a spectacular skating move, but it's very unlikely they could pull it off. They'd have to hope that in the next 2 years there isn't going to be another Democratic sex scandal. And I'm not very well informed, but I can think of a couple myself, and I don't work for the Washington Post.
So it's very interesting. Kennedy, can you?
I can see exactly where he's going.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's room in the sedan for
right.
Not for one more, of course. And it's interesting because I'm wondering if Mitch McConnell is exercising his options, and if that includes, obviously he has to be seated. That's a constitutional question that was settled in a Supreme Court decision in 1969. And, he will, if he is duly elected by the people of Alabama. At this point, it looks like Jones has a sizable lead. What can the Republicans do? What are some of their options in order to save face, Doug?
Yeah, I think this is a real tragedy for the Republicans if Moore loses, because so much is at stake with just one vote. The president has alienated some of these own Republican senators, so every one counts. It counts for Trump to survive this deep state attack he gets so he can appoint career people. The judiciary, nobody's talked about this, but the Barack Obama appointments of federal judges are still impacting, and this tilt in the Senate could impact the timing of Trump's trying to move the judiciary. I think this is a real problem for Trump to lose this seat if that's what happens.
Lee Carter drags out a lot of things, right? Which could explain why the administration's been kicking around an infrastructure measure to take advantage of perhaps a bipartisan environment.
It definitely, it could definitely drag things out. It could make things a lot more difficult if Moore doesn't win. But that said, things are already difficult. Things haven't been getting done as swiftly as they can.
That's a very good point.
And so now,
it's not as if it's been a party up until now.
There has been no slam dunk so far. And so I think if he doesn't win, it's actually going to be a relief for the Republicans, because then they have an excuse. Then they can talk about why there's gridlock, and then it shows that the Democrats are the obstructionists. They're the ones that are keeping them from being able to get anything done. They're not able to compromise. So I think it would be a big relief for the Republicans, because it would get all of this off of their hands. Because as you were talking about, the Democrats do have the chance to be the moral values party, but I don't think it's just moral values. It's the party with a moral compass. Because at what point are people going to take a stand and say, this is what we stand for, this is right, it's not too important to win or lose, we have to do what's right for, by our morals, and that's not something we're seeing coming out of the Republican Party right now.
It's interesting because you also, I think, if Moore, in fact, is defeated and Jones is seated, you're going to see bipartisanship possibly come back into fashion because there's simply, it will be total utility. It will be out of absolute necessity for both parties. And you have very vulnerable Democrats in red states like Joe Donnelly in Indiana and Heidi Heitkamp and Joe Manchin. You know,
they
some
all
of these people
voted no on the tax cut.
They have voted no so far, but I do think there's room, and there are ways of crafting things and using the art of negotiation to bring people on board.
Doug Wead, real quickly, as a presidential historian, you're not looking at Alabama tonight as a litmus test for the South in general, right? This isn't one of those sort of, measurable, impactful elections because of Roy Moore and the uniqueness of this situation. You're not looking at this as a possible trendsetter development either way for the South, are you?
No, I see this as extremely complex with so many Jones and Moore are surrogates for so many forces. It's almost like 5 games of chess being played simultaneously. And don't forget, evangelical Christians are not happy campers. They see the Bushes and McCains and Romneys as having sacrificed Moore, not an enemy of the Democrats. They see that Washington Post story coming from fellow Republicans. So if Moore wins, the Republican Party's not saved from everything. They're still going to have to face some bitterness within their own party.
Gotcha. Doug Wead, always grateful. Thank you very, very much. A quick peek at these numbers coming in. 1% of the vote. So we can safely estimate now. No, just